Help us a great deal of community faith. Move forward in where God has designed us and desires for us to be in the years ahead. I'll introduce our leader for tonight in just a minute, but before I do that, let's pray. Right? Lord, thank you for folks here at White Plains who give an enormous amount of their life, and time, and resources, so that we can be the people that you have called us to be. Now, Lord, use our time here to benefit your reign and your kingdom. Let us, Lord, in a real sense, Lord, remove ourselves so that we can be open to you. We pray in your name. Amen. 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 The strategic spiritual journey is really what we're beginning here with this CALE event. And we also are looking forward to many of you being part of our prayer triplets, which is really key for the next 100 days. Prayer seems to me to always be the place to start anytime that you're moving and asking for God's lead for us. A real discernment process, and that's what we're doing. We got to know George Bullard about 15 months ago, a few of us did, and he was recommended by our district superintendent, a couple of pastors, as we were transitioning and looking at finances and looking at staffing and all of that, and he has helped us tremendously. And also, then other people say, he leads this process of where churches can discern where God is leading us. And you may want to think about it. And so that's why we're here today. Now, one of the things that many of you have already asked several of us is, wow, hiring a consultant and we've made all these cuts, how are we affording that? Well, there are some people in this room that so believe in this process that they said, you know what, we believe in it, and above our tithes, our offerings, and missional giving, we'll pay for it if the church says yes. That price tag is an expensive one. It's $25,000, but it's not coming from anything of the church's pocket. And that's what the leadership of this church said we need to do, and we need to be led. The one thing also I'll tell you about George and the Columbia Partnership, they will not tell us what to do. They do not come with a program and say, here, this is where you're supposed to go, this is what you're supposed to do, so that everywhere you go, you see them, their church doing the same thing. Really, the makers of where our next days and years will be, the folks that will write that, are the folks sitting around your table. Literally. And so that's why you're here tonight. Now, George, he has a bio that's like 25 pages long. I mean, you go on there, if you want some sleepy reading, go on there and find out about his bio. George is widely recognized as an advisor to denominational leaders. That's how I found out about him. A futurist, a strategic planning expert, a group process facilitator, a church growth strategist, an authority in conflict management, and a writer. He writes a lot. He has extensively developed a life cycle model for congregations, which helps congregational leaders know what types of assistance they may need to best facilitate their church. Strategic planning, church growth, and conflict management consultants are all part of what he does. Now also, and that'll be George Bullard, but also there's a big team of leaders that have helped tonight happen. But there's one person particularly that has really given heart, soul, mind, and time to this whole process. And that's Barbara Kastner. So Barbara, thank you so very much. Thank you. And she made a whole lot of reserves. So let us say, praise the Lord.
Amen.
Well, listen, do me a favor, and will you just let George Bullard know how glad we are that he's here. Here's George Bullard. George, over here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Good evening. In spite of all that stuff you read, the most important thing you need to know about me is I'm from Raleigh, in the sense that I was born in the old Rex Hospital. Wow. Almost 65 years ago. A long time ago. My heritage is Baptist. My father was the first pastor of Temple Baptist Church on Old Wake Forest Road. If any of y'all know where that church is. You know where that church is? And so we were here the first 6 years of my life. And then we kept moving north. I grew up actually in Baltimore and Philadelphia. And then I came back to North Carolina to what was then Mars Hill College, which is now Mars Hill University, which is 18 miles from the nearest known sin, which is somewhere in Asheville. But actually now it's only 13 miles from the nearest known sin because they built the interstate. But I met my wife there, whose name is Betty. We've been married for 43 years next month. And I proposed marriage to her. She's from rural South Carolina. And I said, Betty, I love you. I want to live with you all my life. But having grown up in Baltimore and Philadelphia, I just don't think I could ever live in South Carolina. Well, I moved to South Carolina in 1985. And because our children and grandchildren are in South Carolina, I think I'm there, as far as I can tell. And but I realized what I'd done to myself at that juncture, and so I started praying earnestly to the Lord. You know, Lord, you know, I think I could serve you anywhere except Hawaii. Well, reverse psychology doesn't work on God, so but I have been to Hawaii 4 times since I started praying that, so maybe the answer is yes in terms of what's happening. I've been involved in doing this kind of process basically all my adult life. I started out in my 20s as a pastor, but then did graduate work on congregations and the dynamics going on with them and how you would consult with them. So I am just about to enter my 40th year of doing this kind of work. And I've worked with 50 some odd denominations, some more odd than others, all over North America and Europe, in doing these kinds of processes with them. And so I'm pleased to be here with you tonight. What we are actually doing tonight is launching a year-long process known as the Spiritual Strategic Journey. And I didn't want you to think I was getting that $25,000 for the night. You know, although the highest priced Methodist I know is Lynn Sweet. I had him speak for me last week in Canada, Vancouver, Canada. His rack rate is $5,000 a night. Well, I wish I could get that. You know, that would be great. But he's a friend, so he discounted that about a third. But anyhow, you'll see me all around the next 12 months because I'll be here. Love to come to Raleigh. And anytime I get a chance to do that, I do. In fact, I lived here for 3 years back in the last decade in the Wimbledon neighborhood, right down here off of Kildare Farm Road. And so I was here doing a project for Baptist for about 3 years, and then I went back to Columbia, South Carolina. My wife and I did at that juncture. But the good news was, while we were here, our daughter was attending Duke Divinity School. So we got a little bit of the flavor of the area, and the flavor of Methodist, and that kind of thing in that regard. Now, this weekend, we're doing what's called a Congregational Assessment and Learning Experience. And this is the launch time for the Spiritual Strategic Journey. And tonight is the launch night. Now, to be sure that you're aware of all that's happening this weekend, we have approximately 150, 160 people here tonight. Tomorrow, we will be doing focus group interviews all day here in the church. And I think there's still some vacancies in some of the focus group interviews. If you want to sign up for them, there's a sign-up table at the back. Then Sunday, we'll be here looking around the church in terms of the kinds of things that are going on here on this Sunday morning, meeting with staff, meeting with the leadership group, having another focus group interview. And then on Sunday morning, or Monday morning, we'll be giving an oral report of our initial understandings about what we saw here. And then within about 3 weeks, we'll be presenting a report. And so that's the pattern of this particular weekend. Some of you already know about the Dialogue and Prayer Triplets, the 100 Days of Discernment. That'll be an early part of this process because the Spiritual Strategic Journey, that title speaks to the 3 seasons of the process. And the spiritual season involves the 100 Days of Discernment, the Dialogue and Prayer Triplets. The strategic season will involve us putting the strategy together, and the journey season will involve us beginning to live into the strategy in terms of how that's happening and what's happening in regard to that. So that's where we're headed. That's an overview. If you want to know the details, if you want to know the story behind the story, many of you, some in your leadership, have read the book that I wrote called Pursuing the Full Kingdom Potential of Your Congregation. But I got about a half a dozen or more copies back there on the table, a green table as you go out. If you want to buy one of those tonight and read the story behind the story, you're welcome to it. In fact, the process here is I want you to always know that virtually everything we do is open. This is an open church process. There will not be 12 to 15 stale Methodists in a smoke-filled back room coming up with a plan and writing it on tablets and bringing it out to you. It's going to be all of us involved in it who desire to be involved in the process along the way. Now, we do have a lead team of about 30 people because somebody needs to kind of pull some of the things together. But in reality, they're also not really making the hard decisions. They're providing some guidance to the decisions going to be made, because we'll have an open process that will unfold to you step by step that will allow you multiple opportunities to touch this process and multiple opportunities for you to seek to discern where God is in the process of leading you as a congregation. Our intention tonight is to work with you. Oh, by the way, Carol, would you stand up? Do y'all know this young lady?
Yeah.
She works for your conference, Carol Gearing, and she works for your conference, and she's here observing tonight. We'll be here all weekend, and also Claire. Where's Claire? Claire from your district office is here, and they're with me this weekend to observe and shadow this whole process and see how it works. They are not spying on the staff. Okay? They are friends of the staff. They're not spying on the staff. They are here to learn how this process plays out in a church in this particular time. Well, we're going to do 3 things tonight. And if you will stay right with me, we're going to make every attempt possible to get out of here at 9 o'clock. Okay? So that it's not an all-night sucker kind of thing. We're going to try to get out of here within 2 hours of the time we started. We will take one break, one formal break. If you need a personal break at any time before that, feel free to take it. You won't offend me. I'm not going to do a tremendous amount of talking. You're going to do some talking and working at your tables. Here, and so we're going to do 3 rounds of things. We're going to have the shortest exercise right now, and then we'll have the longest exercise in the middle, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll have a little one that's about halfway in between the other 2 at the end. And it all involves you being involved in participating in it and giving feedback. What we hope is that you're going to be learning a lot of stuff about your church tonight. Now, in just a few minutes, I'm going to give you the instructions about the first part of it. And part of what I want to say is that Claire has the instructions. But in just a few minutes, Carol and Claire, and I'd like to ask the church staff just to pick up and help them, are going to pass out some material to you at your tables. But we'll do that in just a few minutes. Let me indicate to you that you need to organize at your table for the exercises tonight. And in fact, Barbara, is this Barbara's husband? Fred. Okay, you all will probably need to sit at a different table. Okay, you will. Okay, that's fine. But at each table, you need to choose someone who's going to be your convener. In other words, someone who's going to lead your discussion at the table. Then you need to pick out someone at your table who's going to be your scribe that knows how to write legibly in English. And then, if you look around the people at your table and you say, this is a rowdy bunch, then go ahead and appoint a sergeant of arms, if necessary. Because we don't want any riots to break out here in the middle of what's happening. So that'll be the key piece. Now, here's my introduction to the first exercise. And quite frankly, while I'm giving the introduction to save time, Claire and Carol and the staff, you all can hand out that first piece. One of the things that's very important about the way we do this process is this. We are not here trying to find out what's wrong with White Plains United Methodist Church. We're here trying to lift up and let you tell us what's right with White Plains United Methodist Church. What do we need to affirm about the church and build on it? You know, typical human nature, and if you want to get theological about it, you have to state it in 2 different ways depending on people's theology. You know, 100% of the people in 100% of all churches that I've ever worked with are post-original sin or sinfulness people. I haven't ever worked with a church that had any pre-original sin people in it. Have you ever attended one of those? Well, as a result of that, one of the things that we do naturally is that we find where the cracks are. We find out by human nature what's not working right in our life, in other people's lives, and in church life, and that kind of thing. It is more of a learned discipline to discover what's right that we need to build on. So this first exercise asks you, what are the signs in the last 12 months of increased health and strength in the life and ministry of this congregation? Now, one of the most famous educator, writer, speaker, consultant Methodists of the last several decades, who's now in his early 80s, I believe, is named Kenneth Callahan. And Kenneth Callahan always said, you can fix everything that's wrong with the church and bring it right up to neutral. It's not what's wrong with the church once fixed that moves the church forward. It's what's right with the church that you can build on and that you can strengthen. And with that strength, if there are some things that are lagging, you can use those strengths to address those things that are lagging. So in this exercise, with the statement at the top, what are the top 10 signs of increased health and strength in the life and ministry of this congregation during the last 12 months? That may not be exactly the order in which it's worded, but that's the essence of what it's saying. We want you to do the following. We want you to individually, for about 5 minutes, to write down the first things that come to mind. They can be a program, an event, something a person did, a mission or ministry involvement of this church, but something as you think about it, boy, this is a sign of health and strength. So first of all, just personally, without talking to your neighbor and letting your spouse cheat off of your paper, if you would just write those down. Then the second thing you're going to do is that you're going to turn around to your table participants and take about 10 or 12 minutes, and you're going to come up with a top 10 list for your table. Now, if and I'm sure Claire did it right, at each table there should be one extra sheet. And that extra sheet, or at least one extra sheet, that extra sheet is for the scribe at your table to write down the top 10 that your table comes up with in English, legibly, so I can read them tonight. Okay? And so what you're going to do is, the top 10 are not in order. In other words, you're not saying number 1 is absolutely number 1. You're just giving a top 10. Priority order within that top 10 is not important. When I call time, and I'll give you some warning, I'm getting ready to call time, then either the convener, the scribe, or the sergeant of arms from your table needs to come up here, and I'm going to ask you to read a portion of your list. And I'll give you instructions at that time, because we want everybody in the room to have immediate feedback of what happened at the tables. Because we're wanting you to go home tonight with a clear understanding of what were some of the things that were being talked about here. So, does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? Remember, 5 minutes to work personally, 10 or 12 minutes to work in your group, come up with your top 10, have it written out for me, have someone bring that report up here when I call for them, and then we'll go from there. Go to it.